Hello and welcome to the fifth in the series on Cyberlites, topics that educators should be aware of when we're talking to our children about cyber safety. And this is always the most requested topic by children, managing online relationships. And it's important that we deep dive into why they find it so incredibly important and why they're worried about it. As you know, this is part of our topics on our framework, where we discuss what we believe all children should be aware of from the age of 7 to 17 when they're safeguarding their digital space. Each child should be aware by the time they're 17 of the risks, the solutions, how things can escalate, and have a playbook of what they can do to stay safe. And as I said, the component that we're really going to deep dive in today is online relationships. Now, why is this important? It's obviously important in the real world, where we are always working on how we can navigate and get our children to communicate effectively with the relationships they have in the playground, with adults, with parents as they grow older, when it becomes more romantic as well. There are guidelines within our communities on how we expect our children to act and communicate in the language to use. This is a guideline that's put in place by the adults around them. So we have parents, aunties, uncles, we have the school, we have the principals, and that is a very safe and aware space we are in. Unfortunately, when we come to the point of technology companies and we are allowing our children onto the apps and they are on there navigating the space, many technology companies believe that they can treat our children at the age of 13 as adults. So the laws and the rules that we may have put into place for 13 to 17-year-olds as they navigate their way to independence may not really be there when technology is doing the parenting for us. Unfortunately, we find not many parents set up the accounts effectively. So our children may be even younger and being on apps with the app believing they're older, so they are set to adult mode. When you are set to adult mode in an app, you are set in a place where other adults can contact you, strangers can see your content, and they can reach out and they can comment. Therefore, we have to be aware that there are people who are obviously positive, are reaching out to game, to be in a space where they can be entertained in an official capacity. But there are people there with bad motivation as well, and they too readily have access to our children. And that's what we need to be really aware of when we're talking about online relationships. Who are the people? What are their motivation? And have we given the children, the students, the tools and knowledge to work out if they're in a safe environment or not? Unfortunately, we're in a space where 80% of our children are talking to strangers online. So the conversation of not speaking to strangers is where we should start with this. However, that feels breached in many instances, especially on apps such as Roblox, Discord, Twitch, where children are communicating all the time with people they do not know in the real world. So we need to really spend some time on this to understand how they can make sure they're safe. Where we see online relationships occurring and starting to entering into our children's world is social media, gaming, and the relationship space when they start dating online. Let's move back into younger children when we're looking at their early years, where they get to communicate with people who are not in their real world is a gaming platform. There are statistics that show 1 in 10 of the strangers on a child's profile are people with ill motivation. They are adults reaching out either to physically meet the children, scam the children, or get content and photos from our children. So this is a very, very vulnerable space that children are in. The first line of defense is for them to obviously delete strangers and not have them in their cyber worlds. The second would be to ensure that they have the tools to spot a red flag when the communication online is not something that is working for them and they can see bad motivation coming into that area. So what does that look like? If somebody's talking to the child and it seems too good to be true, they're offering the child something, or they are asking the child questions that they relate to 100% and they seem to get the child completely. Children need to think, how do they get me so well? Why would they communicate that they get me so well? Should I be worried? These are the type of things that they need to think through. Anybody who's asking them personal questions or getting to know them on a very personal level very early on is also a red flag. If you are gaming and you are playing a game and you're in that atmosphere, why would they have someone asking them such personal questions? In reality, a 9-year-old who's playing with another 9-year-old, they will just be playing the game. They will not really be having a wide and in-depth conversation. So when there is a conversation that is going on for too long, if a child is in a setting where they are taking their computer away or they're talking to one individual for a very long time, this is a really red alert that they need to look at. The other thing that we term as love bombing is somebody who gives so much love at the beginning. I get you. I understand you. I want to send you a gift. You're amazing. Again, a real red alert, especially if students start online dating further into the future. They really need to understand the love bombing. Young kids, it would be somebody who's really trying to connect with them on a one-to-one level. One of the key worries we always have, and children should be talked to and incredibly aware of, is if somebody suggests that you move to another platform. Now, as much as we talk about the risks on children's platforms and where they are, the risks are limited because technology companies do take it upon themselves to treat children as children if they believe or know through their settings that they are children. So in some space, they are safe. Take Roblox, which is one I talk about a lot. You cannot put in certain words. It will be blocked completely. You cannot exchange phone numbers. You cannot do this on that platform. The algorithm would not let you. The reason people suggest to move to WhatsApp or Telegram is they're encrypted. That means nobody can track that conversation or know what's going on. So they are now in a secluded room, as it were, and no one else can come into that space or infiltrate that space. We need children to realize if somebody's moving to another platform with them, that they have to be incredibly aware that that is the biggest red flag. Unfortunately, there are many groomers, we call them groomers with the children, known as pedophiles, who are out there trying to garner physical contact or more likely photos and videos of our child. What they do with those photos is they often will doctor or edit to them to make more pornographic material. And we find that children are incredibly vulnerable because they don't realize that something that could be quite innocent can be taken completely out of context, and then something could be created and put online that puts them in a vulnerable situation. This needs to be made very aware of. We need to give our children the tools to understand and ensure that they are safe online, that they don't speak to strangers, but if they do, they understand that there could be malicious intent behind that conversation that could affect them physically or mentally. What they need to do if they feel that is happening is put themselves into a safe space. One of the conversations I make sure that I always have is, do you know that you have the right to switch off? You have the right to stop and put yourself back into a safe room. What you'll find when the power is not correct, when they feel that they're talking to somebody who may be an adult, they feel like they have to carry on because we've taught them to be polite to adults. But let's give them permission to switch off and put themselves back into a secure place. One of the issues that we have with older children, and it has become prevalent and actually quite a natural part of the teen culture across the world, is the sharing of inappropriate content. What we need to teach at a younger age is how crazy this is, especially when they're at a vulnerable age, where sharing of this content also is a sharing of content of minors, which is obviously a criminal offence that can have huge criminal charges or issues with it afterwards. So the conversation we need to have with our children is that when you put something online and you're sharing inappropriate content, one, no one has a right to demand this content of you. Two, that content is out there and can be exchanged or shared. There is a belief that if you share this information on a product like Snap, where it snaps a picture and then disappears, that it's disappeared for good. Unfortunately, we know this is not true. There are third-party tools that can keep that image, or you could just take a photo of that image with using another camera. So we need to be aware of that. The conversation that needs to start very early is that our online presence belongs to us. If anybody wants to have a part of that, to have a picture from us, they have to have consent. With younger children, it's very important to build in this idea of consent really young. You went to a birthday party, you want to post the picture up. Have you asked everyone in that picture if that's okay? That's part of their digital identity. Ownership of that digital identity belongs to that child, so you must ask. This starts to get in very young, that they own their images online and that consent has to be given before it's shared with everyone else. And this can ensure your child is very safe. Another place where we believe a lot of the boys are forming online relationships that need a questioning or a critical thought process, we need students to think through, is Discord. Discord is a platform which in the old days would be called a chat room, where you can go into rooms and have a conversation on that specialist topic. So it could be about cooking, mainly it's about gaming. And if you are in a server room with people you know in the real world, it's a great way for them to interact or game together. We don't see an issue with that. Often schools may even have their own Discord group to communicate over. The problem is when children go into rooms which are public facing, and they are in a room now with people who may not be motivated positively, they definitely don't know in the real world. They are now engaging content, knowledge, and language that do not match up to the value system of the school or the student. So this is where a lot of pornographic material is shared at a very young age. Then this is where they may hear abusive language that they would not be allowed to use in their real world or their offline world. And then there's also fanatical thought, where people are building relationships to guide or get the child to think in the viewpoints that they're thinking of. And this can be very disruptive and something we need to be really aware of. Who are our children speaking to online? Is that relationship motivated in a positive way or a negative way? And can we see it? Is there any way we can gauge it? The best thing to do when the children are very young is discuss how they can put their settings on, keep themselves incredibly secure. If people are reaching out to them, wanting to communicate with them, to go through the thought process of why, what's in it for me, what's in it for them, am I being scammed, or is there somebody who could be making me very vulnerable? Could I be in an issue that could cause me risk? We need to have these conversations. At the moment, we know that groomers are sharing 2,000-page documents on how to groom a child, while we are just entering into a conversation of how a child can identify if they're in a vulnerable situation. So the odds are stacked against our children. We need to open up and have this conversation. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope that you listen to one of the other videos that we have here to help you teach cyber education in the classroom.